Hello, my name is Tamara from ServiceScape, and on this episode, we're going to discuss the thesis statement. We'll talk about what a thesis statement is, how to write a strong thesis statement for your paper, and why it's important, with some helpful examples that we will provide along the way. So what exactly is a thesis statement? A thesis statement is one or two sentences that make a debatable argument on a paper topic. The thesis is the culmination of your research and will typically guide the overall organization of your paper. It will also directly answer a specific research question that has been posed to you. The thesis statement will almost always be in the last sentence of the first paragraph because it is telling the reader what the direction of the paper is and what to expect in the upcoming body paragraphs. Now that you know what a thesis statement is, how do you write one? Paper topics may vary, but a good thesis statement will always include a few key things. A good thesis statement will require detailed research, a debatable argument, and concise wording in order to be effective. The first rule of a good thesis statement is to do detailed research on your topic. Though it may be tempting to write down your initial opinion, it's always better to come to your conclusion after studying the subject. If you come up with your opinion at the beginning of your research, you may find that it's more difficult to find research that backs your opinion than the other way around. You also may find that your opinion may change significantly after reading about your topic in depth. For example, if you were researching a paper about whether or not collegiate level football players should get paid for their services, then your gut reaction might be that they shouldn't because they get a lot of benefits through fame and a free college education. However, you may find later, after researching the topic and maybe even interviewing a few collegiate players, that the athletes have grueling academic and practice schedules, and that video game companies use their likeness without getting paid. This research may or may not change your thesis statement, but if you hadn't done the investigation, you wouldn't have all the information necessary to have an informed opinion. Once you have read and studied a wide variety of research on your subject, you should be able to form an opinion that will serve as your thesis statement. It's important that your thesis statement asserts an opinion, but it needs to be one that is debatable. For example, if we were to write a thesis statement about the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, we couldn't just write To Kill a Mockingbird was an excellent novel. Though arguably many people agree with and disagree with this statement, it's not really something that is interesting or provides much to analyze. Instead, a good debatable thesis might be something like, in To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee demonstrates the complexity of racism and the courage that it takes to stand against it through the character of Atticus Finch. This thesis statement is stronger because it provides room for further analysis in the paper. Now, in the body paragraphs of the essay, you will have to do a thorough job of convincing your reader that this statement is correct. In addition to making sure that your thesis can be backed up with research and is debatable, you need to ensure that your thesis is not too long. If it takes you more than 2 sentences to write your thesis statement, then it's likely that it's not focused enough. Your thesis statement should be concise and narrowed down, otherwise the rest of your paper will lack focus and direction. If your thesis statement is too long, your paper will meander, and the reader will find it difficult to follow the points that you are making. Always keep in the back of your mind that you are writing a research paper to persuade your reader. For example, if we were writing a thesis statement about the perception of women's bodies in the United States, we could come up with a lot of opinions. Because this is such a broad topic, there is simply too much to discuss in one paper. Here is an example of a thesis statement that would need to be narrowed down. As you can see, these are all great examples of this topic. However, there is simply too much information to cover in this paper. Just picking one of these topics and focusing on it solely will actually produce a much more successful and interesting argument. Though there's technically nothing wrong with this thesis statement, it will ultimately lack a lot of focus and could possibly distract your reader. Now that we have an idea of how to write a thesis statement, you may be thinking to yourself, why does this matter? Learning how to write a thesis statement can teach us how to come to conclusions on a topic with effective research. It can answer how and why something works, and it can also teach a writer to follow directions. In writing and in life, we'll repeatedly be asked to seek out information on a specific topic and to come up with the best conclusion we can find based on this research. Even if you don't end up with a career as a researcher or a writer, it's important to be able to have these crucial analytical skills. In order to do this, you must make sure that all of your evidence is accurate and has been reviewed and verified. When you use good research, it's easier to present a more credible and worthwhile argument to your reader. A good thesis statement teaches writers to be discerning in their research and to come to conclusions, but it also answers how and why questions on your particular topic. Exploring a topic in depth allows you to search for new meanings on a novel, a historical event, or any other subject you might take on. It allows you to go beyond surface level knowledge and question what you know about a topic. When you are writing your thesis statement, you should always question whether or not it answers your research question and that it passes the "so what" test. Though not every research paper that you write is going to bring out new and revolutionary information, it should still be relevant to the topic and to the reader. Last but not least, learning to write a thesis statement is also a good lesson on following directions. You may have written a fantastic argument about the role of mental health in Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, but if your teacher asked you to write about the role of feminism in the novel, then you will likely not receive a good grade. When you are writing your paper, be sure to refer back to the assignment sheet, often to make sure that you are on track with your research. Constantly ask yourself if you are following the instructions correctly. If you're unsure, reach out to your instructor to ask questions. Following directions is another crucial skill that you will learn as you write a thesis statement. It's important that you know how to navigate a thesis statement within the parameters of the assignment. As you can see, writing a thesis statement is learning how to make an effective argument. This isn't something that is necessarily easy to do, but can be accomplished if you have good research, come to a logical conclusion, and write a concise and debatable thesis statement. A thesis statement is not only an opportunity to practice your writing and research skills, but it is also a chance to exercise your critical thinking skills. There will be many times in school and in your career where you will need to use these critical thinking skills to develop a conclusion. Exploring a topic in depth will hopefully answer questions and present new arguments, which will help you to get a good grade and improve your analytical capabilities. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this short tutorial helps you to write effective thesis statements and to think critically about why we write thesis statements and research papers in general. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates on new videos, and check out servicescape.com for your freelance editing and writing needs.